Hello, this is Sarah Sabin, Executive and Team Coach here in the Leading in the Modern Way video interview series. And I am super excited to have with me here today Tom Scott, who is CEO and founder of Trippant. Tom, hello, welcome to the show.
Hello, Sarah.
And could you briefly introduce yourself to my listeners?
Other than what you've already said, that's kind of me in a nutshell. But yeah, my name's Tom. I'm a CEO of Trippant. We are an international communications consultancy working with the likes of Hilton, New Zealand Rugby, Nielsen, spread around the world. We've got people in Sydney, LA, New York, London, Paris. Business is 5 years old. Before then, I've set up another couple of businesses. So we're, at that stage of growth and scale and all the good stuff and scary stuff that comes with it. So that's us.
Okay. So you obviously just said, okay, this is not your first business. So
yeah.
I would class you therefore as a serial entrepreneur. And
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And I'm always curious with serial entrepreneurs, what they've learned over the course of having multiple businesses. And in the interest of focusing this, let's go with 3 things that you've learned from having multiple businesses that you are applying at Trippant.
Cool. 3 things. All right. And if I get to 2, just remind me that I need one more. So first off, I would say that you've got to have a clear vision. And when I started Trippant, that was always quite a fluffy thing to consider. It was like, yeah, great mission, vision, values, especially in communications. You always tell other people to do it. Seldom do you do it yourself. And there's kind of always that, because it's a communication consultancy, like a chef comes home, he might want to just have beans on toast, doesn't really want to do his Michelin star stuff. But yeah, I'd say having a vision and a mission and those values, whether that's 1 answer or 3, have become the core. And I think when I first started Trippant, it was really to give me a target, something to aim at, really, a bit of a raison d'etre. Quickly you realize there's kind of those 3 key elements in businesses. You're kind of an entrepreneur, you're a manager, and you like getting things right and putting in boxes, or you're a technician, you're just good at it. And actually, I think most small businesses probably start with those technician roles. I certainly was, and you go through a big process of kind of unraveling that. So at the beginning, that vision was a real good way just to kind of like, what am I trying to even do beyond just earning money? But as you go through businesses, or certainly the Trippant, we've found is that the values, the missions, the visions, they become so much more valuable for bringing people in and getting people to understand pretty quickly what they're buying into. Also, the sort of people you want to attract. It's less about what you want as a person and much more about what you want other people to get from it. So I'd say certainly, definitely that vision piece is just key. Mission's important along the way. I guess values is probably the second most important. Again, when I first started businesses, and certainly again Trippant, it feels quite throwaway values, or what is my value? Like, it's very hard, I think, for us individually to stop and go, what do I value in life other than your family and spare time and nice food and money and all the easy bits? But actually, what is it that you're setting up as a business for potential clients to see? What are the sort of values you see in other people that you want to, hold as the glue to the business? So values was the second most important part. And I think, again, might sound stupid to people listening, but people is the third most important thing, to get that right, and to get the right kind of people that aren't just, good at delivering the job. I think it's more about the people that have a will to do the job, people that share a sense of whatever the vision or mission is. But it's funny because before I started, I'd always hire people based on the skill first, and then you work the rest out. Like, can you do the job? Cool, you're in. Whereas now, I guess the skill's probably the last element, still vitally important, but the last element to tick off. So yeah, those are the 3. If I had to give you 3, that's what they would be.
Thank you, Tom. And, I just want to dig down into the first two first. And, it's very easy to write off vision and values as these fluffy exercises that don't mean anything, especially because a lot of entrepreneurs are action takers. They're like, right, I'm just going to get into it. I'm just going to start doing stuff, and then I'm going to see how it all unfurls. And that's obviously really good because you need to be an action taker. However, if you are really serious about building lasting foundations, vision and values are at the core of that in so many ways, from the way that you communicate with your employees to how you communicate with customers to branding. And it's interesting you say you initially advise other people about it, but
you
it
forget to do
wasn't
it yourself.
necessarily something you do yourself.
Yeah.
But obviously, over the course of time, you've come to the conclusion, actually, no, this is an exercise worth doing.
Definitely. I'm just thinking about it there. I think it was my my journey in Trippant. As I say, we're 5 years old, and it was really born out of the fact I was working for a big corporate, Nielsen, a big US media monitoring business at the time, 55,000 people, $16 billion. Don't know what it is now, but I'd always had this urge to do something, to do my own thing, as other companies before that. But I was certainly a technician when I first started. I was certainly a freelancer, and I would take a contract and I would work on it. And I thought, well, actually, I could probably juggle 2 of these at once, and maybe there's 3. And actually, my mate does that. Why not bring him in? All of a sudden, whilst it was always under this umbrella, it never needed to be anything more than just that, an umbrella for progress or doing something differently. But spot on. Values are vital. They're vitally important. And as I said, from a branding perspective, differential, unique selling point, a brand positioning thing, it's one of the first things you consider is who's your audience and what is it you're trying to, why wouldn't they go with company B rather than yours? But for me, it's become so much more than just simply a differentiator, which of course is vital. It's, for me, at this stage of where I am personally as a business leader, it's about who do I want to bring in along with me? And it's incredibly, what's the way of saying this? It can be, it's not that you get wrong people. It's you're trying to create something that the right people have to sit in with. And it's not like you've got good and bad people. It's just you're trying to fit the right blocks, because you're trying to, as an SME or a business at scale, you're trying to create a bit of a mini army that's going to go to war with you, not for the client, but that believes in a mission rather than, I understand the mission, here's my invoice. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? You kind of need to, and values are a great way of gelling all of that together. For me, values have become much more of a, as I said before, where do you, Sarah, and I align so we can work together? And we have to, whilst they're not going to be exactly specific, if you were to score each other against that, so for example, our values are number one is a valued advisor. So are we just providing a service, or are we being listened to? Are we giving some level of advisory above and beyond? If our big focus is helping businesses grow, what actually are we giving them beyond our time? I never really even like charging per hour, which is a very common way of charging in the PR comms marketing industry. I hate it. I just feel like, well, if I'm super good and I do the job in half, now do I get a fifth of the fee, right? So are we providing that valued advisory? Second is owning the outcome. Now, when you start the job, whether you're at graduate level, you're a director, are you taking that job? Are you seeing it through? Do you care and nurture for that? Are you holding the client's hand? Do you understand why something might take slightly longer? Are you owning that, or waiting for someone else to come in and rescue you? Third is a trusted partner, again, to our clients, but also to ourselves. Can we have awkward conversations in a small room with a couple of us without people freaking out? Do we feel we've got that level of trust? And we may not be 10 out of 10 on all of these, and it's kind of a work in progress. And the fourth one is an empowered team. Do people feel empowered to make those calls, so it's not really me having to do it all the time? And whilst those might shift and change probably over the next 12 months, depending on how we go and who we work with, they are core for us, and they spell vote as well, which really helps. But they are core for us to bring in people with the same kind of sentiment, people that want to be autonomous. We're building a fast growth business that needs entrepreneurial people that dig in, lean in, and effectively they support each other. So that's not everyone's bag, but it has now allowed us to kind of go, those are the kind of people we want. And actually, currently, right now, they're all the people we've got, and they're great. But yeah, that's where values have become such an important part for our business. It's much more about who we're attracting and who we want to keep from a people perspective.
Yeah,
hopefully that makes sense.
That does make sense, and it also feeds into you used to look purely at skills, but now you look at values as well to determine whether the people that you're hiring will fit into the culture as well.
Yeah, it's kind of like there's four for us. It's like, I think it's like will, value, results, then skill. And normally that's the other way around. It's like, have you got a will to get into this? Are your values aligned? Are the results going to be there? Can I trust based on your past performance they're going to be? And then your technical skill set. Literally up till about 6 months ago, it'd be the other way around. And I think it's probably quite common that they are the other way around. People look for skill. Can you do it? Can you get the results? Cool. Well, the values and the will bit we can work out. But it's just the other way around. It just has to be, because you can learn the other bits, right? But you can't change your values very quickly. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because in one of the other interviews, they were talking about people, purpose, profit in that order, right? Whereas a lot of companies think of it as profit, purpose, people last. It's the last thing they get to.
Yeah.
But obviously, people have such a dramatic impact on the potential profitability of the company. So flipping these things on their heads actually has very interesting outcomes, and it challenges perceptions, which I'm a particular fan of.
yeah, me too. But also I think to that point around, we never really consider profit as something, it's that's just financial control and making sure margins are there and all the rest of it. We're much more focusing on the input. Are we putting the right stuff in? Because if you control the controllables, the rest of it should look after itself. And I think it's also just about being conscious of what you can control and what you can't. And often, we, at the stage of business we're at, this sounds really strange from setting up a business, but profit isn't number one. It might not have been in the top 5. Like we'll work with people and not make any profit. We'll work with people and maybe lose money on it. Now that's not the best way to do business, but if that brand you're working with elevates you into another space, if it gives you a great logo and a great creds deck, if it takes you into other conversations or other markets, well, how much would I have had to spend from a marketing perspective to be now talking with, senior chief executives, in senior international rights owners federations? We've got the Olympics next year. We are now owned a right, given the work we've done the last 12 months, to be in those conversations, where if we hadn't taken some of the jobs we probably had taken on, there's no chance we would have done. I think if we'd focused primarily on things like profit and the outputs of the work we were doing, we'd be treading water quite a bit. But you're right. And flipping it on its head, I think is really useful, because it makes you just look at everything slightly differently as well. It changes the priority, changes your perception on what you think is important and what actually is important. So yeah, for sure. I agree.
Yeah. And I think, just to summarize on the profit conversation, at different times you will look at the same metrics in different ways. So I think this comes down to changing perception again. If you're not making profit on something, are you gaining something else that is equally or more valuable for the long term, which obviously you've just talked about now? And if the answer to that question is no, then you
maybe
have the
don't do it.
problem.
Yeah. And of course you can't be too, you've got to have a balance, right? You've got to have,
Mm.
you've got to, have clients that bring you in the money and you look after them really well. I mean, you can't be so far on one or the other. Certainly from our perspective, look, when we're a big business, that will be totally different again. But where we are right now in our kind of trajectory, if you like, with the work we're doing and our vision for the next couple of years, that's certainly having that balance is where we need to be for sure. Yeah.
So since you've mentioned a vision for the next couple of years, I'm curious, how do you envision Trippant growing over the next couple of years, and what evolutions do you see?
Yeah. So, I mean, our vision, and I think, it's sometimes hard to find the right sentence for what your vision is, because it's got to be, those big, hairy, audacious goals. At the same point, you've got to be something that's like hard to reach, but at the same time, it's got to be attainable and realistic. But whether to my detriment or not, I'm pretty confident, and I think, why not? If someone else has done it, I can do it. And our vision for Trippant is to be seen as, or be the most respected, trusted communications consultancy for our sector. So that's sports, entertainment, and experience. And there are some big agencies that play in that space. I think one of the things that's really changed us over the last 6 months, and probably is really starting to impact the vision, is things like the rise of AI and its impact. If your product is people, and your service is editorial and copy and content, then you've got to kind of look out and check that you've got a business in 2-3 years. And so we made a concerted effort to build out a production arm of Trippant. So it's not just a kind of a PR, thought leadership, content company now. It's got a production arm. So we produce podcasts, we produce and we do filmmaking and white label hosted mini events for businesses. So to really create that holistic storytelling for businesses. But at the core of it was to emphasize the people that drive our industry forward, rather than just the brand. And often in our industry, the time you really see someone is when they're on stage. Now, for that to be the case, they've probably spent a good bit of money, $50,000 to $100,000, to be on stage to say something. And because they've got that small window and they've spent that much money, they kind of have to talk about their products, and they have to talk about their services, they have to talk about who they work with. And to be honest, they said a swear word, no one really cares apart from you and the client. Like the 100 people, 1,000 people in front of you, they're like, okay, cool, that's okay, great. Unless you're kind of a celebrity in that frame, whatever. So we really wanted to kind of go a layer below that and start to eke out and champion, I guess, the people and the storytellers within our industry. And that's become a big theme of our vision, to really elevate the people in our industry. And again, as I say, that was born out of, I won't say fear of what AI means, but it has allowed us to then evolve a vision that gets us closer to people. We've just released our first series of a podcast called The Storyboard, and it's just about pulling out some of or diving into some of the bigger and best stories we've found in the industry from some of the people making the biggest calls, whether it's in the boardroom or at the front lines of sports tech. And it's been, an incredibly rewarding process. One, to connect with people and to see real people dressed in t-shirts that are CEOs. But secondly, as I said, it's really helped us to shift our vision to not just be, we're going to be the biggest and best, and that's cool. It's like, no, well, we're going to be central to what we do, and central to our vision is to help businesses grow. I hate the fluffiness of PR. I despise just long reports. It just does not get me out of bed. What gets me out of bed is, can we actually help that SME, or help that scale up, or help that multinational business or brand? What are they actually trying to do beyond do more on LinkedIn, or do a white paper, or have some press coverage? What are they trying to do that's going to help their bottom line? How is what we're going to do help them grow? And that's what drives us, and that's what's really starting to impact our vision. And then when you add the real people, and you're starting to build these real relationships with people and understand the real person behind brands like Nielsen or the Philadelphia Eagles or New Zealand Rugby or Hilton, you're like, oh, like do more of that. Stop talking about Hilton, talk about you, like, because that's what people will buy off, and that's been really cool. And yeah, so I guess that's kind of how our visions changed and tacked over the last sort of 12 months, but it's still pretty lofty and pretty punchy, and the plans to get there. So let's see.
No, I love that. I mean, on the topic of goals, I'm a big fan of moonshot goals, and you can have different levels of goals. But the whole point about setting a moonshot goal is, if you get even halfway there, you will have done really, really well. And the other point I just want to draw on is the storytelling point, because yes, AI is going to become more and more part of all of our lives, part of marketing, part of copywriting, etc. But the thing that it can't replicate, at least at this stage, so well, is the storytelling, the humanness, the emotion, and all of that comes through when someone is telling a story.
Yeah. I mean, we changed, we had a bit of a mini rebrand ourselves. Not enough people care yet, but we did 12, I don't know, 8 months ago maybe. And a big part of it was, look, there's so much content, and we're even making it now, right? But there's so much out there that you could pick any market, any industry, you'll be swamped by it. And one of the big things we wanted to do is to cut through that and make content that really matters. And for me, fundamentally, it's about the person to person, that peer to peer conversation. So how are you more conversational than presentational? I mean, I've done this for a long time. My first jobs out of uni were really quite high pressured sales roles. I was working for a company called GDS at the time, which still exists, and I'm sure they're great now. Back then, it was a pretty tough business to work in. You're not allowed to sit down, hit a gong when you do a deal, headset, no emails, cold call, and I absolutely loved it. It was proper Wolf of Wall Street stuff. I loved it, but it made me realize, that there is no better sell, and life is about selling, whether it's you're trying to convince someone to come with you on an adventure or whatever it might be. There's no better way, and I got so much from that role, than face to face. And the next best thing is Zoom or Teams or Google Meet. Face to face will always trump. And I think there's something uniquely special, more so than ever before, with the rise of tech, that really puts a spotlight on its relevance. Much like how, God, I don't know, what was it, 20, 15 years ago, when the music industry got turned upside down and MP4 players came out and Napster was a thing, and now it's obviously things like Apple Music and Spotify, and what it's done to the entertainment industry, gaming being outselling movie cinemas. But book sales are skyrocketing because you have that tangible relationship with this bit of art or this thing. You can never replace face to face. You can never replace that human element. And so that's where we're doubling down. And so, or the next best thing, how do you elevate people? How do you eke the stories out of people, the lived experience? Because that's what we'll always buy from each other. AI is going to be a great thing as long as it's managed well. It will always help us, and we'll always be better for it as long as we stay in control of it. But yeah, that face to face, that human contact, that meaningful story, that valued relationship, you can't replicate that. Yeah, that's kind of where we've decided to really kind of double down into, for that reason. And if it's replaced, then we're all done for. So that's where we're going. So yeah.
I mean, it's your best educated guess at this stage, and in my opinion, leadership and the true leadership skills and qualities that people build up won't be easily replicatable either. So to that end, I'd love to know more about how you've invested in yourself as a leader and how you continue to grow and evolve and learn.
Yeah, so just over a year ago, I was helping a bit. I was a CMO at a business. I was still fundamentally tiptoeing. Is Trippant a real business, or is it just a husk for me to do freelancing stuff in and bring other freelancers with me? And I'd made that the point at which this is going to be a business, and it's going to be a big business. This is going to be really successful, and this is where I'm going to take it, and this is where it's going to take me. And it was the point which I got a coach, and it meant it was almost a kind of, I know I need this, and I don't quite know why, but I know I'm lacking something. Mm-hmm. And it's been a dramatic shift in my ability, my knowledge. I think the key one was like understanding the difference between experience and knowledge. You can have all the experience in the world, but if you don't know what you don't know, if you don't know what you're talking about, then there's no end for those kind of books you can read. And I'm kind of trying to read one a week, which is crazy, but that's not cheap. Having a coach. I think so his name's Gary, and yeah, we've built a really great relationship over that time. And having a mentor, having a shoulder to cry on, having a, I think when you set up a business on your own, like being a CEO is pretty lonely. I think being a founder on your own is even more lonely, because you don't want to take it home and give it to your wife or your partner or your kids, and certainly not your friends and not your family, because you want to kind of have a bit of time to yourself. And so that's that investment into myself and into my business has been dramatic. And some weeks I'll be like, I don't even know what I learned there, but the fact that you have one is it worth its weight in gold? It really is. And that would be the single biggest change I would say our business has gone through over the last year, and certainly me. And I can see the change in myself. I remember the first day we had an onboarding session, and it was like I was in a cloud, like literally. Someone talking about, well, tell me the difference between markup and margin. I was like, I don't. Is there a difference? Not really having a handle on your finances, not having a handle on, again, vision, value, missions, not understanding what a recruitment scorecard is, not understanding credit control, not understanding what leverage is, or having a proper referral scheme or a proper marketing engine working, all of this stuff. And I'd recommend a coach to absolutely everyone. I think secondly, for me personally, my career, I'd always spent I always wanted to move forward as quick as I could. And I wouldn't say I'd kill people to get it or push people out my way, maybe slightly a little bit. It depends who you ask. But I never really had that person ahead of me that I was like, I'm going to learn off you and give me everything. I'm going to draw it down from you. I never worked for a PR agency, yet I own one. And so I had people in my life, people like Glenn Lovett, Danny Townsend, who I'd always looked up to, but never from a technical perspective, always more from a, I guess that entrepreneurial perspective. And so setting Trippant up, being on your own for 5 years, up to now 4 years, up to then was, you don't know what you don't know. And you don't know if what you're saying is right. You don't know what you're saying is wrong. You've got a nice big whiteboard and write stuff on it every day. But without that wall to bounce stuff off with, it can be quite isolating. But yeah, you don't know what you don't know. And he's got this, saying it is, whether there is 8 billion people in the world, that all of them must know at least 2 things you don't know. So there's 16 billion things you don't know straight away. So, the ability to realize that and to focus on keep learning, although you've got a team that you want to educate and bring with you as well, you've got to realize that you don't know it all anywhere near it, and you never will know it all. And that realization, the value and importance placed on continued learning is just, yeah, as I said, worth its weight in gold. That would be the single biggest change that I've gone through, and from investment in myself, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and coaching is a big one for high performers. And I think it can be a misused word, because coaching, consulting, mentoring are all very different things. But coaching is that process that is bringing insights out of yourself. And when you've been coached, you're a lot more able to coach your team as well.
Oh yeah, totally. And I think we work in sports, entertainment, and experience, which is the kind of travel and all the other bits that fall into that. But can you imagine a Rory McIlroy, a Serena Williams, a Michael Jordan getting into the Chicago Bulls team and going, cool, I'm done. I'll just crack on now for the next 15 years and I'll go and win what I'm going to win. That realization that, well, hang on, the very, very best sports personalities that we watch every weekend, imagine they didn't have a coach or a manager. Of course they do. They probably have 2 or 3. And realizing that from a business perspective, that might also help you. It kind of, once you've got that and you've got one, you're like, oh, how has this never been? Why are we not taught this when we leave school? We're going to need someone that we're going to continually will help us. And not everyone can afford it. Feel lucky to be in a position the business is doing well and we're doing well, and I can afford it because they're not always cheap. But you can go and get a mentor, and you can get on that first step of understanding that there's a whole other world out there. And once you get to that next bit, you're talking about vision. Okay, well, when you've done that, then what? There's not, you're back at the start of day one at school. It doesn't. That's gone again. So yeah, it's so vitally important. And sometimes I think the best sessions are when you or when you don't really even feel like you've learned something. It's like it's that fuel back in your fire. Sometimes it's like, oh god, yet I totally forgot what we just said last week. Yeah, I need to get back on that. Sometimes it's simple. It's as simple as the plan you've written. Are you even reading it? Like, you've got a vision, you've got a plan to get there. When was the last time you opened that? You go, 3 weeks ago, but I know what's on it. And you open it, you go, oh, I forgot about that bit. So sometimes it's as simple as that. And it's funny when you tell that to people who don't have a coach or aren't in that kind of way of thinking. It's like, yeah, I don't need that. I'll just have a list. But yeah, it's just, yeah, it's crazily important for me anyway. And I wouldn't be in this position, and I don't think our business would be in the position where it is today without that kind of ongoing support, for sure.
So, final question, Tom.
Yeah.
If you could go back in time and give one piece of advice to your 20-year-old self, what would that be?
Wow. Just one bit.
Just one.
How long have you got? So I did an exercise with another coach, funnily enough, a couple of years ago, and it was just like it was probably a couple of minutes worth of exercise, and it left me with a lump in my throat. I was like, oh my god. And it stuck with me, and it was really around, like, don't worry, like, just chill out, like, it's all good. And 20 is quite young as well. If anyone 20-year-olds are listening to this, it is really young. There's a sense of, certainly for me at that time and up to now, and I'm coming up for 40. So that's really only the halfway point. A sense of really needing to go, like, now what? Okay, cool. Like, what's next? Keep going. And not really laying a foundation, or not really remembering the learning, or not really having a clear reference point, but just go. And I think mental health's a big old word, and I think it's obviously it's a much more talked about thing these days. But I would say to myself, just chill out, just relax. And it's not like I'm the most uptight person, but it's going to be fine. It's all good. Find what you want to do. Be happy doing it. Find that little niche that you not enjoy doing potentially as a topic. No one's going to pay me to kick a football, unfortunately, anymore. Never did, but that was certainly in my head at one point. But find the thing that you're good at, you enjoy, whether it's sensibility, whether it's talking to people, whether it's being with a certain group of people, or doing a certain task. It doesn't have to be job related. But yeah, it was an amazing exercise you can kind of go to, which is really shutting your eyes and taking a step, and that step is a week from now looking back at yourself, a month from now looking back at yourself, then a year from now looking back at yourself, and kind of then realizing doing it the other way and just looking back at your 20-year-old self standing at the other side of the room and seeing this quite fragile, unassuming, unaware person, and realizing that it's all good. We'll always be fine. You will always be okay. We are so lucky to live I'm in the UK, and we're probably 0.5% of the population that's just, if you're in trouble, you have a health service. If you need money, there's a dole office. There's opportunity everywhere. Go and work in a bar. It's all good. You'll always be fine. What's literally your bottom? And as long as you realize that, you always be fine. It gives you that, for me anyway, gives me that sense that, oh, well, that's not that bad then. So I can be whatever I want to be then, right? Like, yeah, you totally can, because there's a ton of people that just haven't even got access to those sort of, dreams or tools. So that would be my advice back to Tom at 20. Just relax. It's all good. It'd be fine. You're just good.
Chill. What's that song? Every little thing's going to be all right. Bob Marley.
Exactly. Yeah.
No,
you've got to drive it, right? You've got to drive it. But I think if you spend your time worrying and working at speed, you miss the good stuff. And,
Yeah. And, this is a thing. Life is a journey, and you discover things along that journey. And also, to pick up on something else you said, and I'd like to conclude on this point, sometimes confronting the worst case scenario, you realize it's not actually that bad at the end of the day, and there's a freedom and a liberation that comes from realizing that.
Totally. It's that feeling of being in a job you don't want to be in, and finally having the guts to hand your notice in without really a plan. And that, if I've ever done it, I certainly have, and just walking out and being like, oh, like the whole world's still spinning, like no one cares. No one knows who you are. That guy's still doing that thing, or there's a woman I can like, that person's still walking that dog. Like nothing's changed. It's like you come back from holiday, you're like, did you miss me? It's like, no one does. It's all good. You realize that humility, that you are just a very, very, very small speck for whatever it is, 85 years on the planet. And I said this to someone very recently, someone I was, hoping to come into our business, who's probably a little bit more averse to risk, was, yeah, what's the worst that can happen? Like, what are you imagining is going to happen? Like, say you do this and this, and you join us and you leave a very secure role you've currently got. Then, I mean, things aren't going to blow up. Like, how much your mortgage is, how much you need to spend to get food. Well, I can imagine you can work out, even if it does go Pete Tong, where you're going to earn that. So yeah, I think you're spot on. Like, when you imagine the worst case scenario, it's never really that bad, And I think we've got I feel we do have a duty. It's a lesson I give to my kids. We have a duty, given how lucky we are with the setup we've got and the position, the place we were born, that we're not on a rubbish dump trying to sift through plastic to sell for $1 a day. Like, that's not what we have to do. And people do have to do that. And I think realizing that if you are part of a global community, that's a realistic existence for some people. So you need to get off your ass and stop moaning about it all and crack on. Because if your worst case scenario is okay, then there's no excuse for not really having those big, hairy, audacious goals. Why not? Why would you limit yourself? So yeah,
I feel like applauding that. I'm going to applaud that, Tom.
Cool.
Tom, I have really enjoyed this conversation today.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, me too. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Speaking to me.
Take care.
To my listeners, I hope that you've enjoyed this conversation as well. If you would like to take part in the Leading the Modern Way video interview series, please do reach out to me. Bye for now.